food prices soaring, unemployment at its highest since the pandemic.
To govern, Mr. Speaker, is to choose, and this Chancellor has made all the wrong choices.
Over 150,000 jobs lost, businesses closing, and Britain's debt spiralling out of control. An economic time bomb is ticking. Both Labour and Reform are offering the same reckless plan: more spending, more borrowing and more debt. And it's hard-working families will end up footing the bill. We're the only party who gets it. Britain has got to live within its means. But to achieve that, we need leadership and a plan to get Britain moving again. We need to give people hope and optimism that we can build that brighter future for our country. A place where British business thrives and we're not piling up debt for the next generation. A stronger economy with stronger borders. It's only the Conservatives who can deliver the economy of the future. We can and we will.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just come back from another world. Silicon Valley. It really is a different world over there. The innovation, the dynamism, the constant yearning for faster, better, stronger. I visited technology companies at the very forefront of the revolution in artificial intelligence. Venture capitalists ploughing billions into bristling new things. Lower taxes, cheaper energy, and a people plugged in to making things happen. Right there, in that place, you could almost reach out and touch the future. I glimpsed everything, from driverless cars to humanoid robots, to AI, to advanced reasoning, to quantum computing, to simulated brains, to neuromorphic architectures. I know you don't know, I know. I didn't know what that meant either. Now, you might think that a trip like that would have depressed me when I look at our own economy, stagnating under the cold, dead hand of a Labour government. But far from it, far from it. It raised my spirits because it reinforced in me the sense of what is possible for our country. For ours is a great country of drive and ambition and creativity, of decency, of tradition and heritage. We made the modern world, and we can remake ourselves. For there is a path for us to a more prosperous future. Where this country, our country, can get back to a sense of we can and we will. A country in which it is instinctively understood that wealth creation should be fostered and cherished. A country that once again understands that wealth is created not by governments striking unions and a bloated public sector, but by entrepreneurs, businesses and the hard-working millions. That the makers matter. And to business today, I say loud and clear, Labour may have given up on you, but this Conservative Party never ever will. We will always be there for business. And I know about the vital importance of business. I have lived it all my life. And our great country can bring that culture of enterprise. But to do so, the first thing we need is hope. In a world of great uncertainty, of a failing government and a populist alternative that is totally detached from reality, It is our party that has to provide it. Not in the way of glib words, but in the deep well of thought that will provide the solutions to our many problems. In short, hope can only come with a plan, a radical plan to rebuild our economy. And today, I want to tell you how we will do it together. But first, let me tell you why I am so passionate about that better vision for Britain. Why I feel that we can reach out and seize it. Why I know that we can and we will. Well, I look back at my own story. My mother and father left school at 15 and 14 years old. They had to make their own way in the world. But they had drive. They wanted to create a family. They wanted to provide. So they started their own business. And I saw close up what that really matters and means. The long hours, the risks, the stress, the setbacks, and the triumphs. And my parents gave me opportunities that were not there for them. I won a free place at a grammar school. I studied hard. I earned a place at university, the first in my family to go to university. And you know that I seized that opportunity with both hands, and I ran with it as far and as fast as I possibly could. I never looked back, not once. And I had those age-old words ringing in my ears. If you have a good education, then you have the whole world laid out before you. And when I left university, I didn't go into politics. I did what my mum and dad did. I built something, created businesses, working from scratch from the kitchen table, bringing together teams of people with a common purpose. And I had Nigel Lawson cutting my taxes and removing the red tape. And the whole spirit of that time was one of enterprise and opportunity. And I have in my mind now that image of Margaret Thatcher and Richard Branson on that boat travelling down the Thames with a light playing on the water like an endless stream of opportunity. And later, I had in my hand a key to the first home that I owned. The foundation for the rest of my life. For the wife that I had yet to meet, for the family that I was yet to create. That is a Conservative vision of opportunity, aspiration and achievement. And that is what we are going to bring back. We can and we will. But to do that, we have to fully understand and address the failings of this Labour government, to show our country that there is another way, that the vicious cycle of more spending, more taxes, more borrowing, more debt can be broken, and to demonstrate that it is our values, Conservative values, of sound money, low taxes, entrepreneurship and hard work that can make that happen. And millions are crying out for this. Just look at what this government is doing. Constantly pumping up the size of the state. Increasing spending by $100 billion a year. That's 10 times what they said in their manifesto. And they said their plans involved hardly any tax increases. But what have they done? A £40 billion tax raid, most of it on jobs. And now that Rachel Reeves has blown a vast hole in the public finances, yet more tax rises await. In fact, under Labour, nothing is safe from the taxman. Not your job, not your home, not your pension, not your farm, not your business, not even that which you simply wish to pass on to your own children. You name it, they'll tax it. And we say, enough is enough. And the real-world consequences of all of this? Unemployment is at the highest level since the pandemic. In the hospitality sector alone, 89,000 jobs have been destroyed, hitting our young people the hardest. Futures crushed, and the cost of living is soaring. We left inflation bang on target. Under Labour, it's doubled, and growth has tanked. You remember how Labour claimed they were pro-business? Well, just last week, the Institute of Directors said that business confidence was at its lowest level ever. The result? Thousands of wealth creators have left the country. Labour have no clue about how to build the economy of the future. Although on driverless cars, to be fair, we do have at least one in operation. Yes, it's called the Labour government, led by a Prime Minister who can only do U-turns, a Chancellor who only knows how to work the brakes, and a mob of backbenchers desperate to grab hold of the wheel. Now, of course, thanks to Labour, our national debt is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Debt is set to rise every single year until it is the size of the entire economy. The interest bill this year alone amounts to £6,000 for every working household in the country. And Labour's profligacy means our borrowing costs are now higher than Greece. Lower growth and higher debt sees us weaker and increasingly vulnerable. That is not just irresponsible, it is dangerous. And look at reform. They are just as bad. Reform's manifesto promised tens of billions in unfunded commitments. They want to scrap the two-child benefit cap, spending billions more on welfare. And they want you to pay for it. We say that if you want to fund a large family, then that's great. But you should look to yourself to pay, not the state. And Reform want to get back to the days of nationalisation and state control. They are marching to the left. Be in no doubt, they are the party of more spending and more debt. And when it comes to reform, be assured of this, that when the glitter, the shimmy of the sequined dress, the razzmatazz, the spinning plates, the fireworks have faded, you will be left with emptiness. The dull bell alone, the hollowed out promises that never were. But Reform are being found out, and it is this Conservative Party that is holding them to account. Let's face it, we're the only party that gets it, the only party that will stand up for fiscal responsibility. And that means we have to face some hard truths to which other parties turn a blind eye. We must get on top of government spending. So where Labour have failed, we will bring down our spiralling welfare bill, completely overhaul our benefit system, and put an end once and for all to the human tragedy of millions being consigned to a life on benefits. That is not just a financial imperative, it is a moral duty. For we believe in the dignity and decency of work. That is essential to the health of the individual and the stability of our country. But equally, it is the purest belief of our party that looking after the most vulnerable is the hallmark of a civilized society. But to do that, we need a system that is fair and commands the widespread support of those who pay for it. The current system does not. So we will ensure the benefits are properly targeted at those most in need, with people thriving in jobs where they can and should be working. That includes stopping claims for people with less severe mental health problems, where what is needed is treatment and support, not simply cash. Because we know that the stability, pride and social interaction of work actually improves these conditions. So we say, Labour want to park you on benefits, we want to help you to a better life. And a fairer system also means ensuring that only British citizens can access welfare, because citizenship should mean something. Our approach will get the welfare bill down by £23 billion. The culture of something for nothing must end now. Now, the civil service is too large. In 2016, there were 384,000 civil servants. Today, there are 517,000. We will bring the numbers back down, saving £1 in every 4. And we simply cannot justify higher taxes at home to pay for more spending abroad. So we will significantly reduce the overseas aid budget. Now, we will also take the decisive steps to deter people from coming here illegally and stop pouring billions into asylum hotels. That is an utter scandal, and we will put a stop to it. We can and we will. We will also stop spending billions on Ed Miliband's vanity projects, which are simply driving up bills. We will put an end to them once and for all. In total, the savings I am setting out today would reduce the size of government by almost £50 billion. Now, I am a realist, and we must recognise that this Labour government will be leaving huge debts behind. So I cannot simply say we will use all of those savings to spend more elsewhere or to cut taxes. We will bring taxes down. We must. But we will only do so when it is affordable, just as Nigel Lawson did. Because we know where the alternative path leads. We saw that with a mini-budget in 2022. So let me be clear. The Conservative Party will never, ever make fiscal commitments without spelling out exactly how they will be paid for. We are and will always be the party of fiscal responsibility. Labour have trashed the finances, and it is only the Conservative Party, our Conservative Party, that can be trusted to fix them. So I want to make a very clear statement to you today. Those savings will mean we can urgently bring down government borrowing, because we cannot deliver stability unless we live within our means. No more pretending we can keep spending money we simply do not have. It falls to us, as today's Conservatives, to do the responsible thing. That's the right thing for our country, and it's also the right thing for the next generation. So to younger people I say, we will get debt off your back. We can and we will. And I want to go further, to send an unequivocal message to those young people starting out in life. If you work hard and do the right thing, the Conservative Party is on your side. So we will reduce the benefits bill, and as a consequence, we will fund tax cuts that are laser-focused on aspiring young people. So we will introduce something called the first job bonus. When someone takes their first job, the first £5,000 they pay in national insurance won't go to the taxman. It will go towards a deposit on their first home, or it will go towards savings for their later life. For a working couple, that means £10,000, helping them buy a home, build a family, save for the future. That is the Conservative dream, a dream that built my life. It is why I stand before you today, and I'll fight every single day to make sure that that dream is burning bright for younger people and for generations to come. But responsibility also means building a stronger society through a stronger economy. That is a Conservative value. It means understanding that it is small businesses, the collective efforts of millions, those who get up early and work all hours, who strive and serve, the little platoons that together form a mighty army. They are the force that binds communities together. And at the heart of those communities stand our high streets. Where they thrive, we thrive. Where they fall into decay, the crime and fear seeps in. And so I say, small businesses and our high streets are the unsung heroes. They employ, they create, they protect. They make us alive and whole. Yet for many businesses, the burden of Labour's tax rises is simply too much to bear. Pubs closing, shops sitting empty, high streets hollowed out. Under Labour, many have seen their business rates double. We need to get business rates down. In fact, we need to go further, much, much further. So today, I can announce that as a direct result of getting public spending under control, a future Conservative government will completely abolish business rates for shops and pubs on our high streets. End of. End of, finished, gone. For controlling spending is not an end in itself. It wills the means. It gets the taxman off your back. It sets some of the hardest working people in our country free. We can, and we will. So let there be no doubts. We are the only party of fiscal responsibility. We are the only party that understands the deep challenges that our great country faces. And we are the only party that will meet those challenges head on. Where Labour choose debt, we choose discipline. Where they choose welfare, we choose work. Where they choose stagnation, we choose aspiration. All they have to offer is pessimism, higher taxes, fewer jobs, lower growth, and a mountain of debt for the next generation. What we stand for is something far bigger and far greater than that. Conservative values, opportunity, aspiration, optimism. We are the party of hope. We are the party of the future. We can and we will.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Shadow Secretary of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero, Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Conference. In the last few decades, we lost sight of a simple truth. Energy is a good thing. Conservatives know that the great eras of British growth and prosperity happen when we have an abundance of cheap, reliable energy. Pitt and Peel helped to unleash the coal-powered industrial revolution. Stanley Baldwin spread electricity across the nation after the First World War. Mrs. Thatcher's North Sea oil boom got the nation back on its feet after those terrible years of Labour decline. Today, there is not a single country on earth which is high growth and low energy. That's because energy is not just part of the economy, it is the economy. It feeds into the costs of every business, every journey, every loaf of bread. That's why, right now, the cost of energy is one of the biggest problems that we have. It's a stealth tax that's making us all poorer, and it's killing our industry. Britain has the highest industrial electricity prices in the world, and that has consequences. British industries that use the most energy, like chemicals, glass and metals, are shutting down week by week. The fiberglass factory in Wigan, the refinery at Grangemouth, Vauxhall in Luton, the North Sea. We're losing thousands of jobs by the month. And we won't need any less fiberglass, less gas or fewer cars. We'll just import more from abroad, often from countries still powered by coal. Fewer jobs in Britain, unilateral economic disarmament for more carbon in the atmosphere. And this isn't just about the industries that we already have. The industries of the future need energy too, whether it's advanced manufacturing or AI. Whether it's a factory or a data center or a super lab, they will need cheap, reliable energy. And they'll go where they find it. It would be the first time in generations that we would no longer be at the forefront of a technological revolution and will be poorer because of it. Those businesses will be created, just not here in Britain. We won't have saved the planet. We'll have failed the next generation. And under Labour, this is about to get worse. At the last election, Ed Miliband promised to cut bills by £300. Keir Starmer promised it. Rachel Reeves promised it. Now, last week, Ed Miliband had some pretty choice words for Elon Musk about disinformation. So, Conference, we've got a return message for Ed Miliband. If you want to talk about disinformation, where's our flipping £300? Far from cutting bills, bills keep going up. And every choice Ed has made is making it worse. Ed says that building more wind farms will cut bills. But he's signing up to prices that are the highest in a decade, well above the market price of electricity. Look at this. When he made his promise to cut bills, the price of electricity was £72. That's that second bar in black you see. Last year, he bought offshore wind at £82. This year, he said he's willing to pay up to £117. Now, that's before you add in the extra costs for connections, for backup, and the £8 billion we'll soon be paying wind farms not to generate any energy, but to turn off when there's too much wind. And what's worse is that he's extended the wind developer contracts to 20 years, locking us in to these higher prices for longer. You can think about it like this. He's moving our energy onto a fixed-rate mortgage at 10%. because he doesn't want to be on a 4% variable. Anyone with half a brain can see that that won't cut bills. Now, he says prices are going up because gas is expensive, but that blue bar on the left, that one there, that's gas without taxes. So you tell me what's higher or lower. It's not that hard, is it? He also said that Great British Energy would lead to, and I quote, a mind-blowing reduction in bills. But it won't generate any energy. Only Ed Miliband could launch an £8 billion energy company that won't produce any energy. So let's call it what it is. It's a vanity project that won't cut bills, so we will scrap it. I will give Ed credit for one thing, though. He's managed to do something which is quite difficult. He's managed to unite the trade unions, the Conservative Party, the voters, and Keir Starmer. How? Because they all want the same thing. It turns out they all want him sacked. And here's the problem with the left. They're infected with a poverty mindset. They believe that Britain has a duty to make itself poorer on the altar of net zero, and they think that ordinary people should be the servants of their climate targets. So take air conditioning. In America, nearly every single home has aircon. Here in Britain, just 5%. But Sadiq Khan's London plan effectively bans aircon in all new homes. Why? Because it uses too much energy. But rather than people fitting into the government's policy on energy, I believe a conservative energy policy should serve the needs of the people. Take the North Sea. Ed Miliband's plan to ban new drilling would make us the only country in the world shutting down our own energy supplies. Up to 200,000 jobs and £12 billion in tax revenue lost. Why? So that we can import more gas from Norway from the same fields that we could drill ourselves. Our imports of liquefied gas have soared by over 40% in a single year. So, conference, I can tell you this. As long as we need gas, as much as possible should come from Britain. That's why we will scrap Ed's mad ban on new oil and gas licenses, we will reverse the energy profits levy, and we will back the North Sea. We'll remember what has been forgotten for too long. Energy is prosperity. Now, we have to be honest that the poverty mindset has become inseparable from our climate legislation. We shouldn't have let it sit on the statute book for so long. I wasn't in Parliament in 2019 when the 2050 net zero target was set, but I'll tell you who was, Kemi Badenoch. She was one of only 2 people in that entire debate who had the courage to speak up and ask about the costs. When I came in as Energy Secretary, I started a reset to unpick some of what we got wrong in the face of huge opposition. And I started that reset because whilst we've halved our emissions, China has been doing this. Global emissions are rising much, much faster than we can cut them here. When something clearly isn't working, we Conservatives should have the courage to tell the truth and say so. Net zero isn't working for Britain, and it's not working for the climate. The British people are no stranger to sacrifice for a just cause. But watching good jobs move abroad is not just. Piling more pain onto people's bills is not just. And passing down a country that is less secure and less prosperous is not just. For too many people, net zero has become a religion, and for too long, we were an unthinking part of the congregation. And here's the problem with the legislation. We know it's not working for climate change, but it's also forcing ministers to make decisions that make people poorer. Ed Miliband's 2008 Climate Change Act sets legally binding targets. Every 5 years, targets are drawn up that dictate what products people must buy and when and in what quantities a decade into the future. Conference, we had a name for that back in the 70s. It's central planning. And if all of our industry shut tomorrow and we replace those goods with imports, that would be a win for climate targets, but a disaster for Britain. If people don't want a heat pump, the Act requires you to tax or ban them into it. We're burning wood shipped here from America to produce electricity at 3 times the cost and 4 times the pollution levels of our last coal plant. Why? Because it doesn't count towards our climate targets. Those ridiculous prices I just showed you for offshore wind, why would we have to buy any at these prices? You guessed it, our climate targets. And here's the truth. Whether it was EU directives, or the Climate Change Committee, or the courts who rule on activist cases, none of them are accountable to the people who lose their jobs, or have to pay their energy bills, or who need to keep the lights on. We handed too much control to people who pay no price for being wrong, and that was a profound mistake. So we will set out a new way of doing things. Conference, I know that many of you are proud lovers of the environment. I am too. We will not cede that ground, but we will set out new plans under conservative principles. Our first principle will be to back British innovation. For too long, when we talked about innovation, what we meant is that we would force Britain to be early adopters of technology made in other parts of the world. But look at these charts. Refrigerators, dishwashers, central heating. Here's the thing. When new tech makes people's life better, people will buy it. What we're doing is insisting everyone buys these products before they want to, just to meet a government target. But rather than force our people to be the early adopters, I want us to be the early creators of technology we can export around the world. We're only 1% of emissions. 99% are happening elsewhere, and they're rising. We clearly haven't got this right yet. We haven't created all the products that we need. But if we can create technologies that others can't, that will be, by far, Britain's biggest contribution to tackling climate change. Our second principle will be to protect nature. For centuries, environmentalism was the domain of ordinary people, people who were rooted in a sense of place and a love of home. They wanted to protect and cherish the world around them. Roger Scruton called this the small-scale wisdom of the human heart. But nature is not net zero, and in fact, some of the time, it pulls in the opposite direction. I can think of no better image than this: the Amazon rainforest being carved up to build a motorway to the latest climate conference in Brazil. But what's worrying is that's not so dissimilar to what we're pursuing here. On the left, that tiny dot is the land needed for a nuclear power plant. Underneath is what's needed to get the same amount of energy from wind and solar, because wind and solar use up to 3,000 times more land. To generate the same amount of power as a nuclear power station, you would need a wind farm the size of the New Forest, or a solar farm the size of the Isle of Wight. On a small island like ours, when every inch of countryside is precious, that matters. So instead of carpeting the countryside in wind and solar farms, we will make it easier and cheaper to build dense, reliable, secure, clean nuclear energy. Now, our third and most important principle will be to prioritise cheap, abundant energy. And we're going to do that unashamedly. That's why the next Conservative government will repeal the Climate Change Act. If a law is not working in the national interest, it's not just possible for us to change it, it's our duty to do so. All it takes is courage. Increasing the cost of electricity is the worst possible climate policy too. If you want people to use electric cars, here's a revolutionary idea: make electricity cheap. If you want people to use electric heating, make electricity cheap. If you want to build data centers to cut bills, to reduce poverty and drive growth, make electricity cheap. At the moment, Labour is giving handouts to people to buy electric cars and electric heating at the very same time as they're making electricity unbearably expensive. That's back to front, and we will reverse it. Our priorities will be the priorities of the British people: a strong economy, protecting nature, and cutting bills. So, conference, today I can announce the first policies from our cheap power plan. First up, the next Conservative government will axe the carbon tax on electricity generation. When Ed Miliband blames gas for high energy bills, what he doesn't tell you is that over 30% of what we pay for gas power is not to pay for fuel, but to pay for a carbon tax that the government chooses to impose. Now, we know that we'll need gas to keep the lights on for decades, so it just adds extra costs to our bills for no reason. And here's the rub. The carbon tax inflates the cost of almost all other types of electricity too, so all the wind and solar farm owners pocket those higher prices as higher profits. And since the start of the year, guess what Ed has done to carbon taxes? That. We warned Ed about this. He didn't listen. Labour's EU deal increased the carbon tax by 70% in the space of 9 months. They didn't have to do this. It was a political choice that we Conservatives fought against. Axing the carbon tax would cut bills instantly by almost £8 billion a year. Next, we'll scrap Ed Miliband's old rip-off wind farm subsidies. Back in 2008, Ed Miliband, in his infinite wisdom, chose to double the subsidies on offer for wind farms. That means when the wind blows, there are wind farms getting up to 3 times the market price of electricity, and you're paying for that through your bills. It's the biggest racket going. We closed the scheme when we were in office, but we'll go further and say we must scrap those subsidies for good. Our energy system is not here to prop up the profits of multi-million-pound wind developers at bill payers' expense. It's here to deliver cheap, reliable energy for the country. Together, our policies to axe the carbon tax and scrap Ed's rip-off wind subsidies would cut people's electricity bills by 20%. The average family will save £165 a year off their electricity bill, and I realise this is less than the promises other parties have made. Ed promised to cut your bills by £300, but we all know that's a fantasy. But Reform are just as bad. They promised to cut your electricity bill by £1,000. But do you know how I know that's garbage? The average bill is only £850. What's he going to do, go around writing people checks? If you think any politician can promise you electricity for free, then I've got a bridge to sell you. They are just as ideological as Labour. It's just the mirror image. The difference with our policy is that this is real. This is in the gift of ministers. This could be done tomorrow, and it would cut your electricity bill by 20%. So I can promise you this, when it comes to our energy policy, our priority won't be ideology, it won't be vested interests, it won't be fake promises we can't deliver. It will be cheap, reliable, abundant energy. Now, conference. Being in opposition can be tough. Although I'd like to thank the wider energy team, Andrew, Malcolm, Nick, Greg and Bradley, for all of their excellent work. Quite right. We know this half-baked tax and spend socialism of Labour is a disaster for Britain. When we said in the election that if you name it, Labour will tax it, we meant it. There's a farmer's tax, a groceries tax, a jobs tax, a jets tax, a let's tax, a bets tax, an oil tax, the soil tax, and a boiler tax. There's even rumours of a taxi tax. The truth is, they would rather tax the pants off this country than get their spending under control. And it reveals a fundamental belief. If you try to do well for yourself, get a good job, pay for your child's education, buy a house, start a successful business, they don't celebrate you. They sneer at you. They want to redistribute away your success. They talk about poverty like they care, but their policies are making energy, food, childcare and housing more expensive. And their answer is always more redistribution, rather than confronting the truth that this government is choosing to raise the cost of almost every basic good. Now, Reform, I'm afraid to say, have the economic policies of Jeremy Corbyn. They're promising nationalisations we can't afford, more tax for more welfare, more spending, which means more borrowing, which means more debt for our children. If government is here to serve the liberties of the people, that means allowing them to keep more of the money that they earn. Now, conference, we know growth is the biggest challenge that we face, but growth is not created by government subsidies. It's created by millions of people. And I worry that our system as it stands is teaching people to be less capable than they are. We can't survive if our culture becomes a competition of victimhood. The risk is people start to ask themselves, not what can I do, but why bother at all? Every person who takes some more hours, comes up with bright ideas, takes risks, saves and invests in their future and their family's future. Personal agency, the sense that you can take control of your life and reap the rewards of your efforts, that's the real engine of growth. Everything we do as a party will be in their interests, and we will start by giving them cheaper energy. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Julia Lopez.
Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our Big Tech on Trial debate, where we ask the big questions of the Online Safety Act. Is it protecting kids, or is it simply policing speech? I'm Julia Lopez, our party's Shadow Technology Secretary, leading a brilliant Conservative team of Ben Spencer, Peter Fortune, Paul Holmes, Lord Markham and Viscount Camrose, all of whom are getting stuck into the Labour government on your behalf, from their failures on life sciences to Keir Starmer's socialist dream of a mandatory national ID. Today we wanted to bring you, Conservative members, right into the heart of the conversation that we need to have about technology and the rapid ways in which it's changing our country. How do we strike the right balance between freedom and safety? As the pace of tech quickens, thorny questions like that will only get thornier. But luckily, we have 4 fantastic centre-right speakers on hand today to help us thrash them out. Lord Young, founder of the Free Speech Union with a long history of tweeting dangerously. Andrew Orlovsky, he's the business columnist at the Daily Telegraph who wants to bust the big tech cartel. Matthew Lesh, IEA policy fellow and long-time critic of the Online Safety Act. He reckons he's been viciously vindicated by how it's panned out. And finally, Paul Scully, brilliant former MP colleague and tech minister who took the Act through Parliament but reckons it's Labour's dodgy implementation that's the issue. Before we dive in, I want you to know this isn't just a debate to sit back and watch. You get to have your say at the end by voting live on Slido, so please keep your phones ready. Now let's set the scene. The internet emerges like a pioneer society, and at first it feels like a frontier of endless opportunity as ideas spread and people connect. But just like any community without rules and boundaries, it also illuminates some of our very worst instincts. Abuse, exploitation, and disinformation follow. The effect is poisonous, especially for our children. Governments across the world are now scrambling to put the genie back in the bottle, but regulating technology is a minefield. How do you protect children without silencing free expression? How to impose rules on companies that are larger than most nations? How to enforce those rules in a borderless digital world? The UK's attempt is the Online Safety Act. Its mission is to make big tech accountable for what happens on their platforms, with the strongest focus on protecting children from filth and predation. But the story's been messy, and the new law is long and complex. It could have been even more so, but people like Kemi argued in 2022 for the stripping out of legal but harmful provisions that had major implications for free speech. The final act now focuses on illegal content and on child safety, but the question remains, did we get it right? Is this act a shield that protects children, or a blunt tool that risks policing speech? Now here's how the debate will work. We have 2 teams of 2 speakers, one arguing that the Act is necessary protection, the other that it risks dangerous overreach. Each speaker gets 3 minutes to make their case, short, sharp arguments only. Otherwise, I shall be encouraging you as the audience to start heckling. Then it's over to you, all out there in the darkness. You'll cast your verdict live on Slido, and you get to decide where the balance lies. Think of this as a digital courtroom drama. Big tech is in the dock, the Online Safety Act is Exhibit A, and you out there are the jury. Now let's ask our first speaker, Lord Young, to set out his doubts about the Online Safety Act. Lord Young, please.
Thank you, Julia. So I wanted to make 3 points in support of the view that the Online Safety Act is more about policing speech than protecting kids. The first is in connection with the way in which age verification has been implemented by the big social media companies. Age verification means that unless you can verify you're 18, some content is unavailable to you. And we saw within the first few days of this new obligation coming into force that kids were being protected from right-wing content, but not left-wing content. So a speech by Katie Lamb in the House of Commons about the grooming gangs was age-gated. You had to prove you were 18 to be able to see that speech, but no speech by any Labour MPs were age-gated. Similarly, footage of an anti-immigration protester being arrested at an anti-immigration protest outside an asylum hotel in Leeds was age-gated. So right-wing content likely to support right-wing narratives, more likely to be age-gated than left-wing content, and that's particularly sinister, given that the present government has announced its intention to lower the voting age to 16. Another example, some of the most important free speech safeguards in the Online Safety Act, which Julia and Paul were made sure were included, such as additional protections for journalistic content and content of democratic importance. So before removing that content, social media companies, online providers would have to jump through more hoops. Those haven't been implemented yet. So those safeguards, those free speech safeguards, just haven't been put in place. They're still in abeyance. And finally, Ofcom is planning to force online providers to remove legal but harmful content, even though, as Julia said, that clause was removed from the bill as it went through Parliament. So Ofcom has said it's consulting about imposing additional safety measures. That means forcing social media platforms to remove legal but harmful content, as well as protecting users from online misogyny, not content that's unlawful, but is supposedly misogynistic. So that safeguard too, I'm afraid, is being ignored.
Lord Young, thank you so much. We're now going to turn to the other side, and Andrew Orlowski. Thank you so much for your thoughtful contribution, Lord Young. Andrew, please tell us why you disagree with Lord Young.
Yes, thank you for having me, Julia. I'm here because this is the most aggressive interference in the domestic policy of a sovereign state since the day in 2016 when Obama came to Britain and told us we'd be at the back of the queue if we dared assert independence and sovereignty. I don't think there's enormous pressure from Washington, parts of Washington, to delete this bill and remove our ability to police the internet, to protect children the way we think fit. I was actually just down the road in 2016, I was at an 80th birthday party at a large social club. And Obama said, look, you're going to be at the back of the queue if you dare do this. This is a very apolitical selection of working class Methodists. And when they saw Mr. Cameron and Mr. Osborne smirking behind Obama, I knew their political careers are over. The fury in that room was quite something. There are two strange things about this piece of legislation. One is that it's by far the most popular that the last Conservative government implemented. It has 75% support amongst parents. Support has actually gone up since age verification came in. Only 5% want to abolish it. Now, this is not the first time that Westminster, my people in the media, have completely out of touch with the country. 19 out of 20 people in the country do not want this abolished. Yet in April, the Business Secretary said they would throw it into the trade negotiations and everything was up for grabs. I think that would be a backward step for two reasons. For the last 25 years, we've conducted a kind of experiment where we give one sector of the economy freedom from liability. And the result has been kind of exactly what you would happen when you expect a group of people to police themselves. It's been bad. They've replaced open markets with extremely lucrative black boxes. And it's been extremely harmful for children who are exposed to all kinds of material. There's been a rapid deterioration in mental health. There's a lawsuit going on where ChatGPT persuaded a 16-year-old in California to kill themselves. They told them it was the noble thing to do. And they even advised how long the rope should be. So the Online Safety Act is a very imperfect first step and historic first step to try and address this imbalance of power. I have teenagers. There is no site which is safe from predators because they don't want to do it. And hark back to 2017. The government's Green Paper said, we don't really want to legislate at all. Please self-regulate, and of course they didn't. Over 90% of child pornography is generated by teenagers themselves, almost always in response to a predator. And yet there is no social network where children, like my children, can be assured that the person they're talking to is probably not a paedophile. That is a market failure. So the resulting act is very baroque, it's complex. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union. I think it's the most important organisation in Britain today. And when 30 people are being arrested for hurty words on Twitter, there are so many that I've got friends who have been debanked. There are so many issues in free speech that I'm not saying we should ignore this one, but this probably isn't the greatest.
Can you do that wrap up, please?
Yes. If you want a clue of what's really happening under the surface of the Act, I urge you to look at a lawsuit that's been filed against Ofcom on behalf of a site called 4chan, which specialises in gore. There are rape boards there that are very popular. And the language is incredible. It says, no country in the world should be able to inhibit any technology company from doing what it wants. We spent years extricating ourselves from Brussels. If we abolished the Online Safety Act just to please a tiny minority, we're no longer a sovereign country. And I think everyone who wants our children to explore the online world safely should oppose the abolition of this that America wants.
Thank you so much, Andrew. No longer a sovereign country if we allow pressure against the Online Safety Act to remove that piece of legislation. Matthew, what do you say back to Andrew on that rather punchy claim?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to have this debate. And of course, there's nothing sovereign about reducing your freedom to speak online, or about taking away your privacy, or reducing online invasion. I think we have to look at this in the round. This is a Labor government of unintended consequences. They set out to improve public finances, but ended up leaving us on a low-growth doom trap. They set out to back workers' rights, but ended up costing jobs. They set out to shield children from online harm, but have ended up putting them in more danger. The Online Safety Act has been nothing short of a disaster, not only for free speech and your privacy, but for the very people it's meant to protect, the very people Andrew wants to protect. From the introduction of age verification rules, we saw a huge increase in VPN usage. 1,400% has been discussed. That means children are now being pushed to darker corners of the internet, less regulated platforms, away from moderated places. On the subject of adult sites, we've seen traffic to adult sites that have complied with the laws go down significantly, whilst non-compliant sites have doubled or even tripled. The simple fact is the law is not working. It is having unintended consequences for little to no benefit. For those who do follow the law, of course, your privacy is at risk, because we're now seeing that there's concern about some of the age verification tools not actually shielding people's identities. So in the not too distant future, we could be seeing big data leaks and blackmail attempts. And then, of course, that's before we even get to all the free speech issues we've seen from the Act, where, of course, platforms like X are being forced to censor material by default. That's not big tech being evil. That's not Elon Musk wanting to censor this material. That is the state forcing him to do it. And that is at the core of the Online Safety Act, because if they don't remove enough material, they're going to face massive government fines and regulatory interventions. And that, of course, includes conservative material, includes Katie Lamb's speech about the failure to confront rape gangs, which was suppressed from view, as well as videos of protests outside asylum hotels. Perhaps adding irony to insult, even content critical of the Act itself has been censored. And at the same time, we've seen many websites block access for UK users. Wikipedia is worried that because of some of the requirements of the Act, they could soon similarly be forced to pull out of the UK. This is not the UK's, whether or not it's the UK's sovereign right to regulate. Of course, there is a sovereign right to regulate. The question is this regulation right? And the answer, quite frankly, is no. A Conservative government may have introduced the Online Safety Act, but it was never a truly conservative policy. I say that because Conservatives understand the importance of freedom. Conservatives understand that burdensome red tape and quango overreach is not the answer to complex challenges. Conservatives understand that it's the role of parents to raise children, not the role of the state. And Conservatives understand that real safety comes from targeting actual predators, not criminalising ordinary people. It's therefore no surprise that the Labor Party always backed the Act, that they are enforcing the law viciously, and that they're trying to use the Act in every way. But it's core to the Act itself. It's not something secondary. It's not unintended consequences because Labor's doing it. This is the consequences of the Act. I would also, though, hasten to add, of course, another key Secretary of State behind the Act is no longer a member of the Conservative Party. They've decided to join a different party, which perhaps says something as well. Now, I think if, as Kemi Badenoch said on this stage yesterday, the Conservatives got a lot right in government, but they also made a lot of mistakes. And the Online Safety Act was, quite frankly, one of those mistakes. And it's imperative to reach a policy position to repeal the Online Safety Act.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So Matthew says, Paul, that this is not about sovereignty, it's the fact that this regulation is no good and it is not a truly conservative policy, and that it's for parents and not the internet giants to deal with this issue. What do you say back to that, as the minister who took this bill through Parliament and had to deal both with its detractors but also people who wanted you to go much further?
Exactly. Thank you, Julia. And it's a pleasure to see you all, and it's great to hear those incredible speeches as well. That we should be rightly, passionately fighting for freedom of speech. As Conservatives, it's right at the heart of what we are, our being, our purpose. And so it's really important to reflect on all of those views. And I was reflecting on the views as that bill was going through. I still reflect on the unintended consequences, on the implication of implementation as we see. But what we were setting out to do with the online safety bill at the time, the Now Act, was to set up the guardrails effectively with social media. 15 years down the line, it's something we should have been addressing over 15 years. Problem with politicians, they're not very good at long-term views, strategic views. So we were a little bit late to it. The world was late to setting those guardrails for freedom of speech. But effectively, it actually literally says in the bill that content providers should be protecting freedom of speech. Michelle Donnellan and I, the Secretary of State and I at the time, made sure that we inserted those safeguards within the legislation. The former Secretary of State that Matthew talked about, ironically, has gone to reform. We had to undo the legal and harmful aspects of the online safety bill, which would have meant that Ofcom would have been deciding what is harmful, what should be allowed online for you to see, not you. But all effectively we are doing is, apart from pivoting it to a child protection bill, to make sure that the pornography that Andrew talked about, 90% of that pornography that's actually being created by children and young people themselves, which is an awful figure, that it means that that's less accessible. Yes, people will look at VPNs, but I noticed that spike of sign-ups for VPNs has gone down quite significantly now. But it's the unintended consequences. It's people that don't want to see the mainstream of children that we're now able to rail back from seeing pornography and effectively rewiring their brains. But effectively, in terms of freedom of speech, what we've done to protect freedom of speech for adults is having a three-pronged approach. First of all, if it's illegal offline, it's illegal online. We're then pushing the responsibility back to the tech companies, not to be the policeman of the internet or anything like that, which is frankly impossible, but it's just to make them adhere to their own rules and guidelines that they put on as a terms and conditions when you sign up to the account. You need to have a decent reporting mechanism. You need to have an approach to be able to remove content. Now, clearly that is going overboard in implementation. I think you'll find that actually, as this goes through and people use tech, that's my alarm, that's my 3 minutes done, use tech to actually to protect children and protect freedom of speech, that will start to settle down. But the third and last thing is effectively setting a filter for adults. So not that we're removing freedom of speech from, or anything curtailing freedom of speech on the internet, but if you don't want to see abusive things, you should have a filter to be able to resile from that whilst using the benefit of social media, but getting rid of the bad bits.
Paul, thank you so much, and thank you, everybody, for your points. So there we have it. You have heard both sides. Now it's time for you to have your say and give your verdict. Whose arguments did you find the most compelling? Those of Lord Young and Matthew Lesh, or those of Andrew Orlovsky and Paul Scully? Can you please now pick up your phones, take to the Slido and cast your vote, and you'll be able to see the QR code, which will hopefully take you to where you need to go. Now, while we get through some awkward time as you do your voting, I will ask each team to ask the other team a question which you think punches a hole in their arguments. Lord Young?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Paul, given the present government's intention to lower the voting age to 16, doesn't it make sense to put the age gate there rather than at 18? That's the policy in Australia. They're banning social media use for under 16-year-olds. It's the policy that the Conservative group in the Lords is hoping to introduce into the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill to ban the use of phones by children under the age of 16 in schools. Isn't that where the age gate should be, not at 18? How can 16 and 17-year-olds be expected to make informed decisions at the ballot box if there are reams of content on social media that Ofcom has judged unsuitable for them to see?
I have a lot of sympathy with that, because I wouldn't have lowered the voting age. It was 18 was has been a gateway into adulthood for decades, for hundreds of years. So I don't think it's appropriate to be reducing it. But if that's going to be the new accepted age for responsibility in adulthood, then I'm very sympathetic to that point, absolutely. And you should be banning phones from schools, by the way, absolutely should be. At the end of the day, it's the hardware as much as anything, the use of phones in schools, which is causing the creation of pornography that Andrew was talking about. It's that peer pressure in schools that's part of the driveway for a lot of the abuse that we see on social media.
Andrew and Paul, do you have a question for Lord Jan?
Yeah,
Matthew?
one, I'm neither Toby or Matthew. We've seen a lot about other parties wanting to just scrap the bill in its entirety. I think you've argued, Toby in particular argued about the fact it's a problem with implementation. What would you want to see in its place? If you were going to scrap the bill, if that's what you're advocating, what would you do to protect children and Matthew?
Well, that's probably to me. I think there's two parts to it. One is ensuring that the law enforcement system is properly resourced, not to go after people's speech online, but to go after actual predators. I think that's something the police struggle with. But we know that there are thousands and thousands of reports, for example, about child exploitation material. It's very hard to investigate those. It requires a lot of resources, a lot of dedicated effort to go after the individuals who are causing the harm to children. I think secondarily to that, we have to be very careful about creating a false sense of security here with the Online Safety Act. I think a lot of it actually does, unfortunately, come back to the very high graft of good educational resources, of digital literacy, of ensuring parents understand that they can't just rely on the Online Safety Act and know that their kids are safe. I don't think the kids are going to be safe today because the Online Safety Act is still important to keep an eye on what your kids are doing online and to tell them to be careful about who they speak to and do just like we do in the physical world, that there can be dangers online. So I think it's about that literacy piece more than anything else, rather than taking... I would also say, by the way, that for all Andrew's hatred of big tech are the ones who have platforms that are have the most and devices, I should say, that have the most extensive child safety tools. So it's about ensuring that parents also use those child safety tools that do exist.
Julia, can I make one point, actually?
You can, although the results are in.
Well, because when we put the bill through, Lucy Powell at the time was saying that she wanted to go further, have an online safety bill too. I knew by legislating that would mean that actually she won't have time to do that for years to come. But make no mistake, if we didn't legislate, it would have been far worse. And we have to be vigilant. This is why we need Conservatives in government implementing the bill, improving the bill. It's not perfect. It's the first start. We need us back to do this properly.
What an excellent way to wrap up the debate. So the results are in, everybody. And congratulations to Lord Jan and Matthew Lesh. Your prize is the smug satisfaction of victory and a glass of warm white wine in the dirty hours of this morning at the Midland Bar. Thank you so much to our speakers for participating, and for you, the audience, for really getting stuck in. Thank you to everybody who's already submitted papers to the policy review. We are working through them all, and if you are a Conservative involved in tech and in the science world, or even just an armchair policy guru with bold ideas, please keep your ideas coming. I'm Julia Lopez, and a big round of applause, please, for Lord Young, Andrew Orlowski, Matthew Lesh, and Paul Scully. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
The next session will be held in the exhibition hall in 10 minutes. Victoria Atkins, Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, will be holding a rally in front of the JCB tractor. Please do join us to show your support for the farming and rural community. The afternoon session will start in the auditorium at 2 p.m.
question, that's what she's saying, right? I haven't heard anything, but